It's general election time, and because we operate under an MMP mixed member proportional voting system, the concept of the wasted vote always comes up in discussion. Generally, the statement is thrown around something along the lines of, if your vote is wasted, it goes to another party. But is this true? In the next couple of minutes, I'm going to explain how the wasted vote phenomenon works in practice, based on what actually happened in the general election in 2020. The share of seats a party wins in Parliament is about the same as its share of the party vote. There are 120 seats in Parliament. So here's a basic example of one party winning 50% of the vote and therefore 50% of the seats in Parliament. So out of 120 seats, they've won 60 seats. The other two parties win 25% each, and therefore they win 25% or 1/4 of the 120 parliamentary seats available. So that's 30 each. The seats are then filled by each party, firstly with MPs who have won their local electorate, and then topped up with list MPs to get to the exact number of their share of the total vote. Now, what is the wasted vote, and what happens to it? The term wasted vote is used to describe a party vote at a general election which is discarded or wasted either because that political party did not win at least 5% of the overall party vote, or they didn't win an electorate seat in Parliament. And there's 72 electorate seats around the country up for grabs, 65 general electorates and 7 Māori electorates. According to Wikipedia, a wasted vote is any vote that does not receive representation in the final election outcome. If we look at the number of wasted votes since we adopted the MMP voting system back in 1996, you can see there it's hovered between 4% and 8% of the total vote that's been wasted, except for that very low result you see there in 2005. These are votes for political parties that didn't make the 5% threshold or win an electorate seat to qualify for being in Parliament. Now, some argue that it's not a wasted vote, as it still shows support for that political party, or maybe it's a protest vote against other parties. So how does it work in practice when it comes to forming Parliament? And does a wasted vote get given to a successful party that does get into Parliament? Do those successful parties benefit in some way from those wasted votes? Let me show you how it works, and it's based on what happened in the general election in 2020. And I picked that one because it's a real easy one to see and to get your head around. So in 2020, when we voted, here was the final percentage vote count. Labor 50%, National 25.6%, Green Party 7.9%, ACT 7.6%, Māori Party 1.2%, New Zealand First 2.6%, The Opportunities Party 1.5%, New Conservative 1.5%, Advance NZ 1%, Legalised Cannabis Party 0.5%, One Party 0.3%, Vision New Zealand 0.1%, which all adds up to about 100% of the vote, not including informal or disallowed votes. So let's pretend that there is no wasted vote. There's no 5% threshold, etc. Let's show all of those parties in our Parliament based on their total vote. Now, Labor got 50%, which in a 120-seat Parliament is 60 seats. Easy to see and work out, eh? Now you know why I use 2020 as an example. National got 25.6%, so they get 25.6% of the 120 seats, which is about 31 seats. And so it goes. New Zealand First got 2.6%, which is about 3 seats. New Conservative got 1.5%, which is about 2 seats. But unfortunately for New Zealand First, the Opportunities Party, New Conservative, Advance NZ, Legalised Cannabis, One Party and Vision NZ, they didn't meet the required 5% or win an electorate seat. You'll note there the Māori Party only got 1.2% of the vote, so they didn't reach 5% either. But they won an electorate seat, Waiariki. So they qualify for Parliament because of that. But all the other parties below 5%, their votes are removed or wasted. They are taken out of the makeup of Parliament. They don't get any seats, and all their votes go with them. Now, let me reiterate, even though those votes do not receive representation in the final election outcome, some argue that it's not a wasted vote, as it still shows support for that party, or a protest vote against other parties. It's a vote based on principle. It sends a message of support to the party and what the party represents or stands for. Now in 2020, 92% of all votes went to parties that made it into Parliament. That means that 8%, just over 225,000 votes, went to parties that didn't make it into Parliament because either they didn't win an electorate seat or they didn't reach the 5% party vote threshold. Those ones we just removed. So there's our Parliament. But now there's 8% of the seats that are empty. 10 seats. Who gets those seats? We can't have a 110-seat Parliament. It has to be 120 or more. This is what happens. Remember that Labor got 50% of the total vote, so out of 120 seats, that's 60 seats. But because 8% of votes were discarded, Labor gets a bonus, 50% of the wasted vote seats. Yep, half of those 10 seats. So Labor were bumped up by 5 seats to 65 seats. That's actually more than 50%. It's now 54%. But that's the effect of votes being wasted or being disqualified. Labor benefited, didn't they? But they weren't the only party to benefit. National got 25.6% of the vote, around 31 seats. They were bumped up to 33. Greens, ACT and Māori Party all received additional seats because of the removal of those wasted votes. This is what Parliament ended up looking like. So wasted votes were not given to other parties, strictly speaking, but the effect is that those discarded votes help bump up the number of seats for parties that do get into Parliament. Understand how it works now? It still comes back to you though. You have a choice. They may call it a wasted vote, but it's not wasted if your goal is to send a message to both the party and to the public in general that you support the principles and policies of that party, even if they don't get in this time. On the other hand, you may decide that you don't want Labor to get extra seats or National to get extra seats because of wasted votes, as happened in 2020. But at least you now know how the system works. I'm Bob McCoskrie.